Thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you, Serena and Nicola, for organizing this this meeting, this workshop. I think it's very useful to push other projects and the dialogue about this interesting issue, diagrams and thought and history of science and all these issues. Mm, I would justify or explain the title of my paper because this images is the squaring of circle, the solution that Ramon Llull proposed at the end of the 13th century about this classic problem of geometry. Um, to 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 sum some parts of this, to sum this demonstration, he said that maybe the first you can draw around each square one circle, and this circles proportionally, not exactly as geometrical demonstration, but some visual or some in intuitive way. These circles around the squares are proportional the same area. This is the model of this. But to do that, you have to mark or to spot some points in these diagrams and draw some lines, and in some sense take the square and transform it in curves. The idea is that the squares possibly contain or have in this squares have inside a circle, and maybe it's the idea to how to organize or how to think about nature phenomena and substantial composition. This is maybe a good metaphor, and this is a part of Nova Geometria, and Ramon Llull after this figure show how this works in substance. To curve the substance and show the dynamic between squares, lines, points, I will show 3 points, three aspects and issues in the Ramon Llull thought. The first is okay, the problem of the non-structured substances in the moment or the zero moment of creation, no, and the classic diagrams of Hexaemeron, the 6 days of creation. After after the first action of creator on this Hexaemeron, this first confusion and non-structured substance, suddenly appeared the structure of substances and the composition between matter and form from the elements and the compound substance or elementata. And the last point is how Ramon Llull managed these elementata in some specific problems, especially in relation to the configuration of elemental qualities in specific substances. First, Hexaemeron. The Hexaemeron is, okay, it's a period of creation. Before this is nothing, you know, and after this creation, you have the best action that recommended God, resting. No, I recommend you rest. After a hard work of creation, you can rest. And the idea here is that resting is worth than any activity, said this text. But one of the interpretation, especially in the commentary of Bernard de Chartres and his glossaire on Plato, is that okay, we have an order inserted during this incredible job that creation. But this content of the order is that more interesting point of creation. The creation obviously is in front of us, but how we can thought or think about this order. This is the point, the integumentum, but this integumentum is more complex because maybe appeal to the ancient tradition and the reading of the Timaeus. Some of the images are very interesting because before to create no, the different species and separate, divide the waters, you have a chaotic configuration, waves without any order, and dynamic that anyone can control. In this, it's not exactly matter, but it's like a whole with dynamic that is impossible to manage in the right way. In this image, maybe, but this other problem, you have one of the versicles of the first line of the Genesis, when you see the spirit or that flying on over the waters, no? And we don't know exactly what this means in Hebrew and also in Latin. Maybe check the Septuaginta, but we talk about this, maybe we should check this. But the idea is that the circle is the space where the creator inserted the order and the difference of species. And before you have other hypothetical moment and hypothetical state that is completely disorder. The Latin term is confusion, and of course chaos from the Greek sources. You have other diagrams in which this chaos is called ile, matha, the term in Greek. And not just ile, you have figures that show the order. The two instruments of order in these images are the balance and the compass. This image of the God compass is so popular, but these sources maybe not, especially the second, the Psalterium of Tiberius British Library. And the last one is an evident image of creator with these two instruments. Balance maybe is something that linked with goodness, with equality, justice, and so on. But and the other, the measure, no, the geometrical measure. After you have other episodes of this creation, but it's interesting this idea that the creation is ordered by this principle. But what is the best way to express and represent this order, this good order and measurable order, or geometrically ordered about the chaos, the first state, the waves without any control, and this dynamic is the order of elementa. In this commentary of Calcirius about Timaeus, you have the first ideas or representation of this order. Of course, it's curved, completely curved, and represent the different relation between the elements. And some relations are coincidence and others are contradictory. The idea is that in this tradition that come from 12th century, most of the commentaries on the Calcidio and the Timaeus and not exactly a Platonic text, but from Calcidius' commentary, Ramon Llull suggests that in this chaos, you can't know how is the order if you put in this chaos lines, triangles, squares, and circles, and you put in the extremes of these figures the qualities of the elements and the element itself, and you can, as the text said, you can situate the order of elemental parts. You see the text of this tradition, you see not just the situation or the places of different parts of the geometrical and elemental order expressed in geometrical figures, but especially the order of the motion, because you have in the chaos one motion, not control motion, but you with the geometrical representation, you arrive to an order that explains the mixture in terms of motion, but also in geometrical representation. The formalists became or go step by step to the uniformity of elements. It's very interesting how in this clavis physicae, you have the distribution of this, no? For in the one side, you have the principles, on the other side, you have the outcomes of the order of these principles, and you have the different species in these images. And it's interesting how you have the creator at the top, or you have the God's attributes in the top, but you have after the relation between something that is without order, but other thing that suddenly became something ordered. But it's important to talk about that after the creation, or in the moment that you explain this, you have a dynamic controlled dynamic, you have the elements compound, but geometrical figures, and you have the four bodies, you know? Someone, especially here, this in this Loci Superboetium, talk about the four bodies, with after talk about the geometrical disposition or configuration. And in the following pages in this manuscript of Honoris Augustiniensis, Clavis Physicae, you have some sources from the Autoritas Aristotelis Florilegium that collect all the main of the maxim, the sentence from the Aristotelian tradition and other authors. And in this sentence or maxim or sayance, you have, for example, this statements about how you get the knowledge of the nature if you respect or you take into account, first of all, the principles, the cause of knowledge, and what is these causes? The causes are related with this scheme of elements, maybe the logical places or time in this configuration occurs, and after the outcome of the disposition of the different elements. As you see here in this example that are so embodied, but you have in the middle the conception that you have maybe geometrical order of this. You have in this air, water, and the fire also, but you have before one matter without any form, and you have in the two extremes of tempus of locus. Because if you situate these concepts in geometrical bodies, you can know better how is the composition of the substances. The Ramon Llull projects try to put in order these different relations of the elements. You have here just one of the part of the elemental figures in Ramon Llull's thought, where you see the relation with air, water, earth, and the other disposition and the other positions of air in relation with the other elements. But the idea is that if fire is a simple substances, you can put together form and matter, and after the specific accidents of this composition. And as following the Timaeus tradition, this composition, these concepts or these ideas contracted in the substantial composition are represented by longitudine, latitudine, crescitudine, and figures, geometrical figures, as the Timaeus said. Maybe it's a thought program or thought project that Timaeus, or the text of Timaeus and the commentaries in 12th century suggested to Ramon Llull. No? For you have these elements, but you have to put in order these elements. The best order is this geometrical disposition. And you can understood the simplicity of other elements. What is the model that Ramon Llull used? You have one of the qualities in one start point is the model of horizontal motion. You have a middle, or maybe the way of the relation with one element with other, and you have other stream point. And this is the way, if you understand the relation between fire, water, water, fire, air, fire, and so on. But it's an idea that Ramon Llull did not develop. You have some difference between these relations, one intensive and extended, or extended. The extent is in the bodies that you observe, but the intense is the action itself, or the dynamic of the elements, because the dynamic of the elements give the possibility to reproduce every time these relations. And this spontaneity of the elements is the intensive quality of elements. It's like a virtue. The action of virtue, you push the actions from these virtues. And virtues has the sense of the force, not exactly a force between quotation marks, but works like this, that you can, in this case, the example that Llull gives is the color of the body, that the quality that, if you see, depends on the combinations or the composition of the elements. Have you put this in a graphical way? One of these is put in the first place one of the elements, and in the other part the possible combination between them. Okay, you have all of these combinations, and you have one combination with the other. You have one priority from one element, and you have a sort of hierarchy of relation between them. But are there possibly cases or examples of this? You have many examples, depends if you compare this with real objects in nature. It's interesting here how this relation reproduce in some sense the colligatio from the Timaeus diagram. No, you have a circulation, you have this wave, no, this fluctuant order of the relation between elements, not exactly a straight relation, but sometimes you have other kind of relations that are circular. It's interesting how the points in the Timaeus diagram could be seen as an aesthetic instrument, but maybe it's the points of relation of their different elements. No, because when you compare these diagrams or this representation with the real objects, you see more possibilities of combination between the qualities or elemental qualities. Right now, go to the flowing points, the Wavered lines, and twisting surfaces. This is maybe the model that Ramon Llull proposed. Inspired maybe in this diagram and other diagrams, because this diagram from the Timaeus is so common in manuscript in Middle Ages, not just for the relation between elements, but for arithmetical and musical representations. You have here one of the way of Ramon Llull deal with this relation, curved and twisted. And the idea is you have some spheres of relations. You have points of relation, but these points became three-dimensional bodies, and these three-dimensional bodies have more possibilities than two dimensions figures. And really interesting, because Ramon Llull said, okay, it's like an apple, it's like an egg, it's like a human head. The relation of elements happen in this way in three dimensions, not just in two dimensions. This is the reason why I propose two dimensions, but I take in account the observation, the relation with these three-dimensional objects, the solids, existing in this way. And he said the health, the medicine studies from these elemental relations treat this or deal with this with real objects, not just in in two-dimensional figures. And he said, you use the two dimensions as metaphor of three dimensions. The metaphor, not exactly the metaphor in literally, no, literal uses like a poetry or so on, but the metaphor as the possibility of translate, no, to move the, what do you think about this, the geometrical model to the real models in the nature. This is the sense of metaphora, translatio. You move the sense, you move the concept to the real world, if we can say that. And this is other example of Ramon Llull, but it's linked with the text of Grosseteste. You love maybe this text, and maybe, no, Nicola, that really the Robert Grosseteste opened the possibility to use lines, angles, figures to represent properties, and properties in circular motion. This is the idea that you can use different parts of spherae or different parts of spheres to represent the changes of elements in the nature. And one of the main vocabulary, maybe the really important vocabulary of how it works in the spheres is the term influx, and the language of influentiae et refluentiae, because the dynamic between elements is like a flowing, no? And come back to the main element if you study a specific composition. But if you see that you have this flowing between points along lines that transform this line in flowing surfaces. You have waves, you have twists in these figures. Carla Compagno, one of the main scholars of this tradition in Liber Chaos and Liber de Geometria Nova, suggests the possibility to see that in three-dimensional models and take these figures from Ramon Llull and transform the elemental relation in three-dimensional models. And it's very interesting, this, because it's not just longitudinal, it's latitudinals, no? It's the side of the figures, no? Not exactly the way from one point another that we have seen. One of the models, two-dimensional models, is this figura of the compositione elementorum. And in this, and the explanation of this, or the justification that Ramon Llull gives around this figure, is that you can, in a continuous and contiguous, contiguitas, no? You can build the different relation, but not exactly in the Liber de Geometria Nova, but in other book, he said that you can transform this figure in three-dimensional models. But the idea is you have some simple points, but you have compound figures, but also you have units of transformation inside this representation. And it's curious, the Catalan term that he used, sorry, to talk about these figures. He talked about soliditat. This is the first time that this word appear in some vernacular book from this interpretation of the relation between circles, triangles, and the geometrical disposition of elements. This is other example from other works of Ramon Llull, but the idea is that you can determine, you can spot the different places of the lines, angles, and circles. You can complete, you can see the different disposition in bodies, because in the first quotation you have the definition of body from Aristotelian sources, longitude, latitude, and depth, that this is the body. We talk about objects real in nature, and maybe the suggestion is so complex because you have to do something like this, that is, iterate in a successive way the disposition of the elemental relations. And in this Cuestiones per Artem Demonstrativam, you talk about how to iterate, no? Repeat one more, step by step, the different disposition of the elements. And he offered this figure, no? You can reproduce the rectangle inside the circle. In the rectangle, you have the triangles. The triangle have relation in a continuous and contiguous way, the relation with other relations. Of course, is a conception of elemental composition or configuration of substance that is completely full, without any void. No, is one of ideas of Ramon Llull in, okay, is the stream, no, is the common assumption in the Aristotelian physics that the motion and the relation between parts of substance avoid, no, the vacuum. But it's interesting how he suggests I have a model, no, someone without any education in geometrical sources suddenly launch a proposal to construct and configure an iteration of different geometrical objects in this demonstration of elements relations. One of the application in a specific discipline is for medicine. In medicine, you have different distributions of the degrees of the elemental qualities. And you represent this in this circle. You know how the parts of the fire is disposed of in relation with all the parts of the other. If you count this position, you have, in this case, the representation of one object this object has more parts of fire. This is the representation of pepper. When you got the pepper is pure fire. And the pepper is good for some, according to the chemist, or maybe the design of medicine is good for, no, for sheer the spirit, no, sharing the spirit in some cases. And this is the disposition of the configuration of pepper, no? And you can construct this according to these models. To finish, I would establish, no, the relation of these diagrams with the Chinese medieval tradition. This is from the Confucius Temple in Pingyao in approximately the middle of 12th century. And you have the representation, the first line is, this is the image of Qi and Tao, the forces, the dynamic forces behind nature and human behavior and the order of human communities. But the Tao is maybe the desideratum, the main goal of all of this dynamic. And you have some representation specific for each discipline. And you have one that the first circle represents human being, the human being, the conceptions the human being have about nature, and in the base of this relation, the nature in itself. No, it's curious how this diagram is similar with the clavis physicae, the relation with clavis physicae, but we should undoubtedly to study more this diagram in Pingyao. It's in a public place, supported by a turtle. Turtle is the guardian of this knowledge and wisdom. And the idea is that maybe we can find here other guardians of this tradition. Thank you very much.